All right, we are live with the one and only. I'm not going to waste any time with this because this man needs no introduction. I want to give a special thanks to KVAR, everyone over at kvar.com and Arsenal. But we have the one and only Mayor Rudy Giuliani. What's going on, Mr. Mayor?
It's a great pleasure. Oh, nothing's going on. It's real quiet.
I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be on the show. It's amazing having you here and having you to be able to comment a little bit. I want to dive right in and I want to reflect on something before we go forward. We're coming up on 19 years of 9/11. How do you feel and when you look back on that time, because that was a pivotal time for myself, how does that hit you?
You know, John, over the years, you think about it less and less. But it just so happens that yesterday, and I was up most of the night reading about it. Yesterday, Bernie Kerik got his pardon. And when you say Bernie Kerik, to me, the first memory is being trapped in a building. First tower had come down. The building was shaking. My conversation with the vice president was cut off. And all my people were under desk. And there looked like, I don't know, a typhoon outside. And we were trapped in that building for 20 minutes. Governor Pataki thought we were dead. And we weren't sure we were going to get out. And I would say Bernie was a rock of strength. He was the guy I went to talk over the alternatives. Had a conversation with Bernie that you can't imagine ever in your life you're going to have. When we got out of the place where we were trapped after 20 minutes and everybody breathed a sigh of relief, we got out into a hallway, an entrance really to a large office building. And we thought we were now really safe. And then we realized that office building could collapse because it was getting hit by the falling tower. And the first inclination was to go outside, and I looked outside, and I could see that people outside were getting hit in the head and knocked down, including one of my police officers who went outside and came back with his face totally bloody.
Right.
So what the thought in my head was, we got two choices. Rudy, I said, you got two choices. You got 35 to 40 of your top people here, 3 of your 4 deputy mayors, your police commissioner, your head of emergency services, the guy who's going to run the entire relief effort. People can do the construction. People can do the finances. This is the core of your government minus 3 or 4 people. If they all get crushed in this building, I know we're not irreplaceable, but we were a hell of a lot better than the last 50 years of city government. And at a time like this, they really needed us. So I said to myself, if we stay in the building, we're all going to die. If this comes down. If we go outside, I'm going to risk the lives of some of them, but they're not all going to die. And there was only one other person in that group I could discuss that with and be sure that I wouldn't have a emotional reaction.
Right.
I grabbed Bernie by the arm and I said it to him just the way I said it to you. He said, "Boss, you got the best instincts here. What do you think?" I said, "You know the answer, Bernie. We go outside, right?" So we got everybody, we rounded them up and we went outside. And some of them weren't sure. A television reporter who doesn't like me, he actually gone back to not liking me. He said, "I want to interview you, but I want to leave the building." I said, "Andrew, you come with me. You'll be safe with me." I have no idea why I said that. He wasn't really safe with me.
Right.
I always had this feeling of invulnerability. That's where I got it from. The mafia used to threaten to kill me, and I laughed at it.
Yeah.
And I took him out with me and did the first interview. So when I think of the day, those are the things that come back. And when I see a man like Bernie get a pardon from President Trump, when I heard about it, I cried. And man's been through a lot, but he's about as big a hero as I know. I know about 10 really great heroes, and he's right up in that group.
Yeah. It's a lot, and I know as we creep into the 20-year anniversary, there'll be a lot of emotions that'll probably come over you. But that was, you were such an enormous figure at that time, and I can remember being in college and seeing it play out. And I was just, you did such a great job being this amazing leader for everybody to look at.
You know what really is phony as hell? The liberal press. When I was the mayor of New York, I think there were 98 editorials in the New York Times about me. I think 90 were negative. 90. And I'm being objective now. The New York Times can't possibly intellectually refute the following statement. I did more for New York City since Mayor LaGuardia. No one's matched my record since Mayor LaGuardia. And since he had to live through the Depression and the Second World War, he couldn't do as many positive things. But he was a great leader because he had to lead during difficult times, like I did September 11th. So I tend to be a humble person until you attack me.
Right.
But the fact is, the New York Times has never given me credit for what I did. They'd always demean it. They'd always act like I was some kind of mean Republican. When I required people on welfare to work, which eventually moved 500,000 people from welfare to work, that's larger than most cities in America. They treated it as if I was a racist.
I think you were one of the most liberal Republicans, if anything.
I didn't get the Republican nomination in 2007 and 2008 because I was too moderate.
Yeah.
I was too moderate Republican because I was pro-choice. And in fact, I'm the last pro-choice Republican to run for president. And President Trump likes to tell people if I had changed my position on it, I probably would have been nominated. But I'm not sure that's true, by the way.
Yeah.
But I would not change I'll give you a man who changed his position on it. And luckily he didn't win, I guess, in the long run. Romney. Every position that I held to, he changed. I remember there was an article in the New York Times, beginning of the year before we ran, and it said Giuliani could be the Republican nominee and he could be the president. But he's got to change these 4 positions. And I held to 3 of the 4, and one of them really wasn't a position, it was a tactic, and that related to guns. I was always a supporter of the Second Amendment, a supporter of the Constitution, and I'm close to an originalist.
Right.
I believe that in a city like New York, that's as crowded as we are, where we have so much trouble controlling guns, that even the rather useless help of gun control helps. Gun control is an inefficient method of going after criminals.
Absolutely.
And this is not a liberal or conservative. My views on gun control developed as a law enforcement officer. I had to reduce crime. I'm a very practical guy. I sat there with my guys who were all geniuses, including 2 professors from Harvard and street guys. I tried to blend that together. I said, okay, what did other people not think of? Let's blue sky. Let's do things people didn't think of. And one of the things was, well, can we strengthen gun control? And I said to myself and to them, well, that's totally ridiculous. The only people who comply with gun control are legitimate people.
Right.
What good does it do to me to take guns out of the hands of a doctor?
Right.
Who's just protecting his office. When we have 300 million guns in America, more than half of which are illegal. That's the place I got to attack. I got to attack the bad guy with the gun. And that developed something very timely, something called Stop, Question It, and Frisk. And I am very proud to tell you, I developed it with Bill Bratton. I developed it in 1993 and 1994. And I developed it because I'm a good constitutional lawyer.
Right.
There's a case called Terry versus the United States. It's a case that allows a more modified form of search by police officers where they don't have probable cause to believe a crime is being committed or committed. If they have reasonable suspicion, they're allowed not to immediately search, but to stop. And they're allowed to ask a question about their suspicion. And if their suspicion is a weapon, they're allowed to do a brief outside frisk to determine if there is a weapon. It's a very, very complex Very important distinction, but it's a very important constitutional right that's involved, the right to be secure in your own person. So I developed that policy with Bill Bratton. We were very careful to train our police officers that they had to do it right. There was no winks, no nods, no, hey, you just don't like the guy. You go searching. You got to see a bulge. You got to see something that looks like drugs. You have to see a suspicious transaction or conversation. You have to see, you think you saw him hit his girlfriend. You got to see something.
Right.
And you have to record it. You can't just dream it. So we did it for 8 years, and we brought the murder rate down 64%. Gun murder, 75%. And we literally did it without any change in the gun control laws. We didn't weaken them. We didn't strengthen them. During that same period of time, Chicago had the same gun control laws as us and couldn't bring down murder. And they can't bring down murder today.
Right.
Because they don't know how to focus in on and go after the bad guys and the guns. So the year that I left, we had done a little under 100,000 of these. We were about 35% successful, meaning 35% of the time we got it done. Originally, we had been even more successful, 50, 60%, but we were starting to get the guns out of the city at this point, which is why murder went down 65%. And the Justice Department wanted to bring a lawsuit against us. And the Eastern District of New York recommended suing the city for violating the civil rights of African Americans because 70% or 68% of the people searched were African Americans, and they constituted only 24% of the population. So it must be discriminatory.
Right.
And I have to say, when liberals get an idea in their head, their Harvard education disappears, and they become totally emotional. They're like religious zealots, and they lose their ability to reason. So they recommended this. And my corporation counsel was afraid they were going to sue us and try to take over the police car of the Monitor. And my real talent is being a lawyer. And I had done this many times. And I said, I'm going to call the Attorney General. I know her, Janet Reno. I worked on drug cases with her in Miami. I'm going to call Eric Holder, the deputy, who used to work for me. And I'm going to ask them for a favor. I'm going to say, your subordinates want to bring a case against us that's going to cost us millions. And that's useless because we're the best police department in the world. I know you don't believe me, but if I can come and prove to you that there is no case, you got the courage to overrule it. They said, oh, come on, you don't have to say that. That's our job. So I prepared. I got ready. Like I used to argue cases in the courts. I argued one of the Supreme Court, brought all my charts, and I showed them the following, which really knocks the heck out of that theory, right?
Right.
I said, it is true we searched 68% of African-American males. And by the way, African-American males are only about 13% of the city because we didn't search women. That's very disproportionate.
Right.
But do you know the number of violent crime complaints that we get? They're about 75% African-Americans. Every year for the last 20 years, the murderers in New York City are anywhere from 70 to 75% African-Americans. Hispanics constitute 20-something percent. Whites constitute 8% of the murderers. Victims, same thing. 8% white shooters, 12% white victims, something like in the 70s for shooters and victims for blacks. So blacks are basically killing other blacks. When we get an identification of a black as the murderer or as the rapist or as the burglar, 9 times out of 10 we get the recommendation from another black.
Right.
So we're not selecting; they're self-selecting. The people of the city are determining who we look for and the proportion in which we look for it, based on who they are complaining of trying to take their lives away. And if you think you're going to do any good by setting up some stupid formula, we're going to have a city which 3 times more crime than your last Democratic mayor. And by the way, you haven't had a year in which there were less than 1,000 murders in 35 years until I came into office, and they were all liberal Democrats.
Right.
So carry out your stupid idea, and you're going to see what happens. So The U.S. attorney argued his part of it, which was stupid. And Eric Holder, I don't know what happened to him, said, look, Mayor Giuliani has presented compelling statistics. If they're correct, there's no case. If they aren't, you can go forward. I'll let you guys know in a week. And a week later, he said, no problem. You're doing the right thing. Now, I tell you that long story because that was in January of 2001. It got held unconstitutional 11 years later. And Michael Bloomberg the other day said, the program he inherited from me.
Right.
Which gave the impression that I, advised him on an unconstitutional program. I am incensed. The program I gave him involves the search of no more than 100,000 people. The program that got held unconstitutional, he was searching 600,000 people. My success rate was in the 25s, 35s, 45, 55, 65. His was 5%. 5%. And 550,000 people were being searched every year that didn't have a gun, didn't have drugs, and for all intents and purposes were innocent.
And the police now are scared to death.
And he didn't have a tie to terror against the United States because he may be a billionaire, but he's not a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And when he articulated it, he gave a terrible articulation of it that made it look racist, and he isn't, because he basically said if you go after blacks, you bring crime down. Well, the reality is you don't go after blacks. You go after criminals, and that's how you bring crime down. It is true. If most of the criminals are white and you go after black criminals, you don't bring crime down.
Yeah.
Or if you try to conduct law enforcement by proportion of the population, well, 52% of the people we search every year should be women because they're 52% of the population, but they only do 8% of the crime. So you want to try to figure out if we are a colorless, we have a colorless approach to crime. Look at the statistics. Don't talk about in another city. The criminal group could be something else. When I was going after the mafia with 200 FBI agents, including counterintelligence agents and 200 police from Italy, they could have said, "Why are you focusing so many resources on us?" Irish people commit crimes, and German people commit crimes, and Jewish people commit crimes, and black people. And you got 400 FBI agents and Italian police working in your office. Well, break up the mafia. I'll go do something else.
Right.
I don't particularly like breaking into homes in the middle of the night. And my cops can get caught, or my detectives can get caught. I mean, I kind of did find it exciting, I have to say.
It's a focus-based approach using data and using numbers as opposed to, taking and waving a large stick or a magic wand. And I feel the transition, Mr. Mayor, from Bloomberg to de Blasio and so on and so forth, like you said, they've dumbed it down to eliminating that, and it's caused a lot of angst. You have to look at how law enforcement in the city feels, and you must be sick to your stomach.
I am. I go up every time I can, and it takes a lot of time because we have a lot of police officers in this city. And they look so young. They look, I think, like my grandchildren. And I had 4 uncles who were police officers, one who was a firefighter, and 2 cousins who were police officers. So I truly grew up in a police officer family. And I grew up in a police officer life from the time I was 25, 26 years old. I was an assistant U.S. attorney. I made, I think, some of the most famous cases of the last century. And I did it with task forces of FBI agents and Secret Service agents and detectives from New York and Boston and Philadelphia. I had 50 Italian police officers working in my office when we were doing the mafia. I had to get Sicilian translators. I had Spanish police officers. I love the police. I know how to work with them, and I know them all over the world. And I know how to motivate them. And we have a mayor who is, John, I cannot describe properly how bad a mayor he was.
Yeah.
I thought that Barack Obama was the worst president of my lifetime. At that point, I would have said Jimmy Carter. But I think he gave Jimmy Carter a break.
Yeah.
but there's no comparison between how weak a president Obama was and how terrible a mayor de Blasio is. He almost doesn't exist. He's out. He's out of it most of the time. Shows up an hour to 2 hours late for everything. Looks like he's in a fog. And the good thing about him, and this is why everybody dislikes him, he doesn't do anything. So I can't find a person to defend him. I can go out there right now and I could attack Biden, right? Or I could attack Hillary, or they could attack Trump. You'd find somebody to defend, right?
Right.
You can't. I can't. I mean, I have tried it. I've gone into restaurants and bars. You're not supposed to go into bars, but I do sometimes. And I'll say, anybody here want to defend de Blasio? Well, some of them think I want to have a fight. And they say, no, Mr. Mayor. One of them said to me a while back, Mr. Mayor, when you were the mayor, I thought you were the best mayor in the history of the city. I still think you are. But now that you're defending Trump, I think you're evil. I said, oh, thanks. He said, but take you over de Blasio anytime.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get to that.
I'm evil.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Here's my take on it. I look at Bloomberg and I look at de Blasio, and I have tons of friends in New York that are cops that I talk to almost weekly. I reach out to them. I mean, they're legitimately scared, Mr. Mayor. They're like, you can't do your job. You have a hand tied behind your back. I mean, they're scared to death, and they're like, there's nothing we can do that's right. Everybody there's cameras on us 24/7. If we sneeze funny, they're getting buckets of water thrown on them. They're getting harassed. To me, that's assault. They're getting harassed at that point. And there's no one stepping up and being a leader. So
leadership involves symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership that you have. If you don't understand symbolism, you can't lead large groups of men or women. I wrote a book on leadership, and I've given many lectures to all different groups on leadership, even seminars. And I like to use the movie. MacArthur, with Gregory Peck playing MacArthur. And he wants to get the men to go to the front. So he stands up in his Jeep. General Bradley's in the back seat, and he drives to the front. And the sergeant who's driving him leans back to Bradley because he's afraid of the general. And he says, is this guy crazy? I mean, he's going to be the number one guy in the front. They can just kill him in a second. And Bradley looks at him and says, he doesn't believe he can be killed.
Right.
He doesn't believe he can be killed.
Right.
But of course, what was it? It was a fabulous display of leadership. It's one thing to say to the men, get up out of your foxholes and run up the hill. It's another thing to take up your human body and show them that you're going to take on the risk even worse than you're asking them to take on. You have got to understand symbolism. And when you have a shooting that's ambiguous, and you immediately and always take the position against the police, and you at least don't say, police are entitled to the benefit of the doubt. After all, mass murderers are entitled to the benefit of the doubt.
That's correct.
So shouldn't we give the men and women who put their lives at risk for us the benefit of the doubt? Let's calm down. Let's not do the Al Sharptons, get in the street, condemn them, and then find out, 3 days later, they were being killed by a drug dealer. When I became mayor, there had been 2 riots like that in my city. Totally unnecessary riots caused by and all kinds of inflammatory situations. So I had a policy that when something happened, I got the facts right away. I went on television and I made sure that I straightened them out.
And you did a great job explaining it and breaking it down. And I think it's the erosion of the database investigations and the erosion of the approach to how that policy is supposed to be implemented. But it also shows the slippery slope as you get some of these guys in office that don't have a law enforcement background, how they go on and they interpret it to use it as a, like I said, as a wand. They try to wave it like a wand across, and it doesn't work that way. It's not the way it was intended to be used.
Well, that is absolutely right. And it is not, New York may be the worst example, John, but I will make a broad statement, and it's political as hell, but it's real. You look at a city that's been governed by Democrats for 40 or 50 years, and you're looking at a city that is in disarray, that has tremendous homelessness, that has out of control murder like Chicago, the murder capital of America, that has homelessness to such an extent and such a degree that I'm worried about. I'm not going to say the plague, but I'm worried about communicable diseases. Los Angeles has already had some of it. I mean, you can't have feces on the street and not expect illness. That's how we got the plague. I don't understand it. I think these people have become totally disconnected from reality and even from a human conscience. I worked on homelessness, not because I'm some kind of mean person and I don't want people to be happy. I worked on homelessness because I felt bad for homeless people.
Right.
And I tried in everything I did with social policy to say to myself, how would I handle my brother? If I got a call, I hadn't seen my brother in a couple of months, and they said, you know, Rudy, your brother is homeless and he's on the streets of Chicago. He doesn't seem to have any money. He looks drunk or whatever. I wouldn't go there and give him $10 to get liquor, right?
Right.
I'd go there, hug him, pick him up. I'd say, brother, come with me. Let's go see a doctor. Let's go see a psychiatrist. Let's go see somebody who can find you home. Let's go see and sit and talk. What's wrong? That's the policy I put in effect as mayor of New York City. We confronted the homeless in New York, and we made them get analyzed for the problem they had, and we required them to be treated. Now, how do we do that? We couldn't get a law to do that. I wouldn't allow them to live on the streets, and they didn't challenge it. I made a ruling. I said nobody sleeps on the streets of my city. Streets are not made for sleeping. That's what bedrooms are for in the modern world. And toilets are indoors nowadays, and they have been for 5 or 6 centuries when we solved the plague.
Right.
We're not going back to the Middle Ages. Not in my city. You don't sleep in my city. If you want to sleep, go to New Jersey. Go someplace else. Go to California. My city, no sleeping. So here's what I would do. You bedded down. The police officer approached you and you were told to move on or come with me and we'll get you evaluated.
Right.
It was a persistent problem. We sent a social worker. And we gave them no room to go anywhere. We broke up homeless encampments of 500 and 600 people. We did that in front of the Trump buildings. And recently, there was some article that there was some kind of corruption involved in that. Of course, I didn't even know it was done because by that time it was being done routinely. So I would say by the time I got to September 11th, even before that, we virtually had no homelessness in the city. We had people that were being treated for things they should be treated for, like paranoid schizophrenia, and not becoming wild and crazy on the street. Liberals are stupid. They're stupid.
Yeah.
You hear that word? Liberals are stupid. They think people living on the street don't get worse. They should study the disease of paranoid schizophrenia. The more you become isolated from society, the more the paranoid schizophrenia gets worse, and the more likely it is to turn into violence, which is why we used to have all those crimes in Central Park,
Right.
because people would live there. And as they lived there, some of them who had tendencies to violence became more violent. But the liberals didn't do anything about it, because we had liberals in New York City, including a prior mayor I respected who signed a consent decree that people had a right to live on the street. Where the heck did that right come from? I don't remember Madison or Hamilton or Jay discussing it in any of the Federalist Papers. And not only that, it's not only inconsistent with rights, it's inconsistent with a civilized society.
Right. Now,
well, John, we got so much to talk about, and I got stuff to do, and I'm more than happy to come back and talk again. But I have to do a promo for my podcast.
absolutely, give it a plug. I want, and if I may, after I want to ask one more.
And every day I want you to plug it.
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you why. I think it is doing a great service for America. It's giving people the truth. So today there's one coming out, and I think it's our 7th or 8th. And it's our 7th. I'm not sure if it's Mickey. I'm not sure if it's Mickey Mantle or Yogi Berra. You know why I just said that?
Yes, I do.
Because Mickey Mantle was number 7 and Yogi Berra was number 8.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said that. So we'll get the right number, but it doesn't matter. You just write this down. You go to Rudy, R-U-D-Y,
yeah,
Giuliani, Rudy Giuliani, CS for common sense.com. Just my name, spelled right, which is a challenge. Rudy Giuliani, R-U-D-Y, Giuliani, CS for common sense.com. You go on there, you'll get it. You see that little thing that says register or subscribe.
Sign up.
Yeah. Just press the button. It doesn't hurt, and you don't have to pay anything. And then you'll get notified, and you can watch them or not watch them. And today's episode will be with a gentleman who's sitting to my right now. He is a member of the Parliament of the Ukraine. He is an expert on many, many things. He's a lawyer. Been in the Ukrainian Parliament for 17 years. Andre? 17? 20. Just that he looks young. And he's an expert on accountability. And one of the things that we're going to talk about in today's episode, and then we're going to follow it up on Friday with a real, I would say, smoking gun, just a bombshell. We're going to talk about he is one of the few people who has actually been able to read the entire prosecutorial file in Ukraine.
Wow.
And because he owns a newspaper as well, he has a lot of journalistic reports. So I would say he probably has the best overview of what actually happened in 2016 in the Ukraine, which really was a continuation of what was happening going back to at least 2011 for some time. And he knows. So he can tell you things that are just demonstrably true, like when they say that the investigation against the Bidens was debunked.
Right.
He can tell you in the file are the records showing that at the time that the prosecutor was fired by Biden, which was in the nature of a bribe of Poroshenko.
Of course.
He was actively working on the case. He had just seized Burisma, and he had just gotten this money laundering document in which Hunter Biden was dead square in the middle of it, guilty as sin.
And Mayor, how does he get away with it? How does he get away with that?
I will tell you, every time you read somewhere that the charges are debunked, it's a complete, absolute lie. It's called untrue, lie. When they say there's no evidence they did anything wrong, they have to be lying again. Mr. Shokin, the prosecutor, testifies that he was fired because he wouldn't slow down on the Burisma case because of Joe Biden. Now, you can believe that or not believe it. You can't say there's no evidence.
Right.
Now, these reporters are smarter than that. But we have tape recordings that constitute evidence. We have charts that constitute evidence. We have documents that constitute evidence. And we have 5 witnesses that will testify against him under oath, not like the dishonest whistleblower who wants a bag over his face and is afraid to tell us who he is. These are real, honest-to-goodness witnesses. Can you make up, or can you challenge their credibility? Yes. I mean, the only person who couldn't challenge the credibility of witnesses ever in America was President Trump in the Schiff proceedings, where he presented secret witnesses, and then when they were presented, nobody could cross-examine. But in America, not in the kind of almost reminder of the Soviet Union that he gave us with his witch hunt, you get to cross-examine witnesses. But if a witness comes forward and says, I saw that man shoot someone, you can say the witness is lying, but you can't say there's no evidence against the guy.
Right.
And then if 2 people come forward and 3 people come forward, and one of them has a document that corroborates it, then you got to say you got to investigate.
It just
these people they don't even get away with they don't just get away with crimes. They get away with not being investigated.
It blows my mind, because if that was Donnie or Eric, they'd be crucified, Mr. Mayor. They'd be crucified. It'd be all over the news. It'd be every day.
You wouldn't need me doing a podcast. You believe me.
It'd be insane.
You wouldn't need me doing a podcast. I'd be covering the trial.
It'd be insane. And
I'd be defending them in the trial.
Yeah, and I don't know how. That
because the perverse liberal left-wing media has taken over, and they have become similar to the way a media operates in an authoritarian country. They put out a script, and haven't you noticed they all say the same thing every day? Impeach, 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 impeach. Then debunk, 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 debunk. No evidence, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence. Giuliani has lots of business interests in Ukraine. That's why he's doing it. Giuliani has lots of business interests in Ukraine. That's why he's doing it. Giuliani has no business interests in Ukraine, by the way. None. None. Complete lie. So, John, ask me the last question so I can
the last question I have...
Go back to work.
Yep, absolutely, Mr. Mayor.
Having too much fun.
Absolutely. The last question I have pertains to the impeachment and going forward. Is this the last gasp from the Democratic Party? And how bad did Nancy Pelosi and that team, in plain English, fuck this up?
I mean, look, as Yogi Berra or somebody used to say, it ain't over until it's over. Or then they got in, it ain't over until the fat lady sings. But they seem to have done a pretty good job of screwing it up.
Oh my God!
But they're such liars. They should. I mean, they're not good at pulling off lies, and they make complete fools out of themselves. And I don't know what's wrong with them. I don't know if they have an emotional illness. I mean, watching her behind the president at the State of the Union, I thought I was looking at a person with some kind of illness.
It's like an infant child tearing up documents and making
tearing
faces.
Up the documents, and how about preparing them to be torn beforehand?
Yeah. Is this the last gasp? Are we witnessing the last gasp? Because
no.
Because he polled incredibly in New Hampshire, and everybody's fired up. Everybody's getting out the vote.
But I think they just read those polls wrong. They say one more shot, it'll get it right. Maybe we can do something with this bar thing. This is a question of policy, not a question of law. The President of the United States runs the Justice Department, not the Attorney General. The President of the United States runs the State Department, not the Secretary of State. When I was the mayor, I ran my agencies. And when my commissioners didn't understand it, I show them the city chart. And I'd say, what does that say? This is a mayoral agency. So you know what that means? It means I'd make the decisions.
Yep.
And you have a choice. If you don't like it, get the F out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't like it, but you can handle it, then keep your mouth shut. But if you don't like it and you really think it's wrong, get out of here and criticize me, and I'll defend myself against you. And that's the way it works. It's called a unitary presidency, unitary executive. It's the only way an efficient government can work. Right. It's the only way a democracy can work, because the guy responsible is not the Attorney General. He doesn't go on the ballot. The guy responsible is the president. When my commissioners wanted to do one thing and I'd want to do another, I'd say, would you like to run? So I'm not running defending that. So you're going to have to do what I want, because I can run and defend that. It's a good thing. It keeps us on our toes. But John, it's been a great conversation. And don't forget, Rudy Giuliani, CS.com. And here's where they screwed up the spelling, right in the middle there, Giuliani. They love to do GUI. But I'm going to remind them, because I was a Latin student for 5 years. Giulio Cesare. Julius Caesar's name in Latin is Giulio, and it's spelled Giulio. If you ever took second year Latin, you saw that for a whole year in translating his Gaelic wars. So it's GIU.
Well, I think
GIULIANICS.com. You're going to enjoy it. You just hit that button there that makes all the noise, and you'll get them all the time. And I think everything I tell you, I back up with a document or a witness. I don't give you bull. I don't give you shift. Okay?
Mr. Mayor, I can't thank you enough, and I appreciate the time. And you made a promise to me when you get to Vegas, we're going to get together.
I'm coming. I enjoyed this so much. I'm coming to see you. We'll probably talk for 2 hours.
Oh, absolutely. I think we got to carve out some time, and there might have to be some food in there too. We got to eat. So I can't thank you enough, and I appreciate your time.
Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Welcome, Trump.
So there's the mayor. There you have it. I appreciate him taking the time and chatting with us. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank everyone at Arsenal. I want to thank everyone at KVAR.com. You just heard Mayor Rudy Giuliani giving some of his remarks, reflecting on 9/11, reflecting on New York, stop and frisk, and some of the pardons and some of the things going on in the administration right now. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys took some time. Please do me a favor and remember to leave a review on iTunes. And don't forget to check us out everywhere podcasts are heard, The John Bartolo Show, and head over to KVAR.com and purchase some freedom. I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate everyone taking the time. It's been amazing. And the mayor is a great guest and amazingly gracious. I appreciate him, and go check out his podcast.